At 1:20 p.m. on March 23, 2005, a massive explosion and fire erupted at the BP refinery in Texas City, Texas. The explosion killed 15 workers and injured 180 others, many of them seriously. The blast occurred at the isomerization or ISOM unit, which produces materials to boost the octane rating of gasoline. Firefighters struggled to rescue the injured and recover the victims. 50 large chemical storage tanks were damaged, and the ISOM unit remained shut down for more than 2 years.
During the early stages of our investigation, our team had noted there were multiple safety system deficiencies at the Texas City plant. We also found there was a history of fatalities at the plant. We wanted to know what the connection was between this history of fatal incidents and the organizational and cultural factors.
BP Corporation's lack of focus on preventing major accidents allowed budget cuts to be made without assessing the impact on process safety.
The CSB found that cost-cutting, production pressures, and failure to invest significantly impacted the process safety performance at the Texas City refinery and left the refinery vulnerable to catastrophe.
After the merger with Amoco, BP ordered a 25% reduction in fixed costs at all its refineries.
This impacted important process safety systems such as staffing, training, and mechanical integrity.
The effects of the budget cuts became apparent in a number of internal BP documents made public following the accident. In one, the refinery manager was quoted as having observed in 2002 that the infrastructure at Texas City was in complete decline.
For a long time, people were saying that most accidents were due to human error. And this is true in a sense, but it's not very helpful. It's a bit like saying that falls are due to gravity.
There were a number of human errors that contributed to the overfilling of the tower and the disaster that followed at Texas City.
No one shows up to work planning to make mistakes, so we looked at the conditions in the workplace that would make error more likely.
The CSB investigation found that underlying conditions in the ISOM unit encouraged operators to consciously deviate from written operating procedures.
Why did they make that judgment? I think they did because these procedures were, some of them were out of date, some of them were nobody had said otherwise, nobody had said, hang on, you must be following these procedures.
The investigation found that operators were concerned that if they let the liquid level in the tower get too low during startups, it would damage the furnace. So they had adopted an informal procedure of adding extra liquid to the tower during startup. To do this, they placed the level control valve in manual, not the automatic mode required by procedures, and left the valve closed to raise the liquid above the recommended 6.5-foot level. So routine had this practice become, the CSB found that the tower's high-level alarm had activated 65 times during the previous 19 startups. The outdated operating procedures for the unit did not establish any safe upper limit for the liquid level in the tower. Unknown to operators, regularly overfilling the tower had serious risks. The tower's liquid level transmitter had a limited range, and should the liquid rise above the maximum reading of 9 feet, operators could not know if the tower was dangerously overfilling.
This informal practice of running the level in the raffinate splitter tower above the range of the transmitter led to running blind.
They weren't aware of the dangers of overfilling the column, and so they tended to err on the side of what they saw as caution by overfilling the column. So their systematic deviation from what they should have been doing was actually well-intentioned. It was with the interests of the company at heart that they were violating the startup procedures.
But on the day of the accident, the routine deviation, overfilling the tower above the range of the indicator, coincided with a number of instrument failures, which impaired the board operator's decision-making. This had tragic results, as the board operator lost awareness of just how high the level was. The tower level indicator had been calibrated for years based on 1975 data for a different liquid used in a different process. As a result of the miscalibration, the indicator showed the level in the tower was declining just prior to the explosion, when it was actually increasing. And a backup high-level alarm on the tower failed to activate, seeming to confirm that the liquid level was dropping. A sight glass on the tower was dirty and unreadable and could not be used to visually check the liquid level. The investigation concluded that the board operator truly had no functional and accurate measure of the tower level on March 23, 2005. And when the liquid finally did spill over into the blowdown drum, the high-level alarm there failed to go off.
BP procedures required that alarms and instruments and other equipment be checked for their functionality prior to startup. The CSB determined that these checks were largely not performed. A positive safety culture would ensure that incidents are being reported, that they're being followed up on, that there's enough resources to ensure adequate safety.
Over the years at Texas City, many critical incidents were not reported, nor were the lessons acted upon to prevent future catastrophic events. For example, BP wasn't investigating abnormal conditions that were occurring repeatedly during startups of the ISOM unit.
The CSB examined 19 previous startups in the 5 years prior to the ISOM incident and found in the vast majority of these startups, the operators ran a high level above the range of the level transmitter. The problem with running the level above the reading is that you don't know how high the level really is. This can lead to grossly overfilling the tower.
But even though high levels and pressures could have led to a catastrophic accident, the previous startups were never investigated as near misses, and procedural deviations became accepted as normal. The CSB investigation also found 8 serious releases of flammable vapor from the ISOM blowdown drum, 2 of which caught fire between 1994 and 2004. Only 3 of the incidents were ever investigated.
Well, it's widely recognized now that you should investigate near misses, or really near accidents, what they call near misses, as thoroughly as you investigate accidents. So it's only a matter of luck whether a leak of flammable liquid or gas catches fire or not.
So the problem at Texas City was that they were essentially blind to this issue of process safety. They were focusing on personal safety.
The CSB concluded that over a period of years, BP managers focused on lowering rates for personal injuries, such as slips, trips, and falls, while often disregarding key process safety indicators.
We as members of the travelling public intuitively understand that the numbers of baggage handling injuries really tells us nothing about the likelihood of a major accident, an aircraft crash, and no airline in its right mind is going to try and convince the travelling public of how safe it is by telling you about its workforce injury statistics.
Process safety deals with the fires and explosions and toxic releases and things like that. And you can have a very good accident rate for what we call hard hat accidents, but not for process ones.
There are a whole series of incidents occurring at BP in the years prior to the accident, gas releases, other kinds of releases, fires, all of which were telling you that process safety was not well managed.
You need to measure process safety performance with the appropriate indicators, both leading and lagging indicators.
Lagging indicators measure events that have already occurred, such as fires, explosions, and equipment failures. Leading indicators are designed to predict the likelihood of an accident before it occurs. For example, the percentage of equipment inspections that are overdue.
The opening of a safety release pressure relief valve is itself an indicator that things are not as they should be. So we should count those and try and reduce the number of occurrences of those sorts of events.
But the investigation found that BP did not effectively use leading and lagging indicators to measure and drive process safety performance. For example, BP's pay plan rewarded managers primarily for controlling costs, The only safety metric used to calculate bonuses was the personal injury rate. Process safety was not considered.
I didn't know this was happening, or not happening, as the case may be. If I'd known, I'd have stopped it. Now, this is bad management. It's the manager's job to know what is going on. And he can do that by going round and by keeping his eyes open and reading the accident reports in detail.
The CSB investigation noted that BP ignored numerous warnings of the potential for a catastrophic accident. The report, issued in 2007, concluded there were instances of a lack of operating discipline, toleration of serious deviations from safe operating practices, and apparent complacency toward serious process safety risks at each of BP's North American refineries. The Baker panel also voiced concern that other companies share similar problems.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are under no illusion that such deficiencies are in fact limited to BP.
The Baker panel report concluded that the restructuring following BP's merger with Amoco had resulted in a significant loss of people, expertise, and experience in the refining sector. Only much later did BP recognize the negative impact of these changes. The CSB's final report said all hazardous chemical operations should be required to review the safety impact of major organizational changes.